on a planet, the local planet here in our system. It was Jupiter. And the whole planet just radiated with the energy. And I spent time there with these incredible people or beings, and I got a glimpse of mankind's destiny or future as it was possible.
And as we approached the window, I closed my eyes, and as I did, I felt this stickiness. It was a stickiness and a feeling of something being pulled very slowly across my face. It wasn't painful, it was just very, very weird. I opened my eyes because I felt cold, I felt wind on my face, and I was aware that I was now floating outside of the window, 3 stories up, looking down at the car park with a very bright light above my head. I couldn't really see what was above my head. I was just aware of this very bright light, one little grey on each elbow. I was aware of them, and we floated up into the craft.
And people have said, well, then you were abducted, and I said, no, I went very willingly. And they've also asked, how can you tell if you were to meet an extraterrestrial? And I would have to say the energy field, because when they're in your presence, they absolutely resonate at a frequency that's so much higher. And it can only be described as, dealing with them could be described as ecstasy.
I had been taken in the middle of the night while I was asleep, and I was asleep through the whole thing until all of a sudden I felt some pressure going up my nose, and it startled me so much that I opened my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, I saw this large-headed being with gray skin, large black eyes, and small other features that was looking down at me. And he had long fingers that he was using to hold this instrument that he was using to shove up my nose.
I feel knowledge is power. And someday, maybe next week, maybe tomorrow, maybe 5 years from now, we're going to get all of the proof we need that somebody exists. Hey, an ET might show up and I might actually get an interview. The point is that the more we know about this subject, then less legend can take over. If you see a craft hanging near you, don't get out of the car, don't stop the car, don't see what's happening. If you see one coming towards you, you don't have to be an abductee if you don't want to be. They go away, evidently. We have tens and tens of people telling us, said, I don't want to do that anymore, and they let them go.
What we call abductions, or certain categories of abductions, took place as a result of an authorized genetic upgrade of the human race, trying to get us out of our warlike ways and ecologically ecocidal ways.
The indigenous reptilians seem to have a very strong interest in the biosphere of Earth being stable, that it's not jeopardized unduly, and some who have kind of analyzed what the reptilians have been doing or had some kind of interaction believe that this is because the reptilians view humanity as a resource, and they don't want that resource to damage itself or damage the biosphere.
They had about 18 scientists that all had been working on the project, various stages of the project, gathered around a big oval table in the Los Alamos headquarters with Edward Teller, the head of the Atomic Energy Commission, sitting at the head of the table. One of the aliens on the opposite side of the table from my engineering friend put in a white shirt and slacks so he would look less alien, but he still had his alien bigger head, bigger eyes, black eyes. And he was sitting in the conference, and the only people that he could understand everybody else because he was telepathic. And the only way he could communicate, though, was with the signs that he had developed with my engineer friend to answer the question. But here's a man, an alien from another planet, sitting in a conference in 1968 in Los Alamos headquarters on the progress of learning how to bridge the gap between the alien technology and ours.
They were going to suggest to the American generals additional technology exchange projects, and I think they were using me as the test guinea pig to take me on board the scout craft, and then they could test my reaction to what I was impressed with and what I wasn't with.
My life changed, and I was never ever quite the same. So the study itself was not as complete as it could have been. They concluded what they wanted to conclude. One, there was not a threat involved. Two, they weren't the Soviets. Three, the evidence was overwhelming. They were extraterrestrial. Four, there were 4 groups involved. 4 different groups. And they were all humanoid, but they were not human. Only one of the 4 was what we considered to be human. One group out of the 4 looked so much like us. I mean, almost identical to us. They could have put on these guys could have put on a suit and tie. And for the females, because we encountered some of them as well, they could have put on a dress, suit and tie, coat, jacket, sit down with you, next to you in a restaurant, sit next to you in a theater. You'd never know.
Sono persone come noi, che hanno un corpo come noi.
That have a body like ours.
In questi UFO,
in these extraterrestrial
che io prendo poi quando parlo,
vehicles,
lo prendo in senso largo, cioè anche delle persone che o sono dentro.
He says, I'm using this in a large sense. Or the people are inside the craft.
Ma questo è molto molto difficile pensarlo. Oppure comandano, ma sono distanze enormi. Se si fanno vedere da noi, mica c'è un pianeta che è a 1000 chilometri da noi. Se no a 1000 chilometri ci sarebbero già arrivati.
But they make themselves seen and known to people on Earth.
Quindi è molto ragionevole che siano dentro.
So it's probably logical that they're inside a craft instead of coming from somewhere else without a craft.
E quindi sono persone come noi, composte di una parte spirituale, che la chiamiamo anima. Gli UFO, io non ho mai parlato con un UFO, non ho avuto...
He says they would have to have a soul like we do.
Ma che abbiano anche un corpo, devono averlo un corpo.
They'd have to have some kind of body.
E se no sarebbero angeli.
Otherwise they would be angels.
How can countries, one of which actually borders with the United States, be having UFO visitations by the hundreds when other major nations of our world insist that they are not? And even more importantly, how can these countries' governmental policies, both official and otherwise, be that they never have had UFO or alien contact? The only logical explanation is in fact that governments are willing to lie.
For the past 9 years, I've been researching into the United States government files on what they have on the UFO phenomenon and all sorts of different conspiracies. And I've reached 183,000 pages of government documents on the internet.
There is a political block, what I call a truth embargo, instituted by the government, that they are not ready to formally acknowledge this, quote, presence.
Anything that involved absolute proof, like hardware and bodies, was siphoned off completely into another track.
They just can't allow information to come out overnight so people would be perturbed and actually demand that something be done about it. They stonewall it, deny it, lie about it for, 30, 40 years, and then finally just announce it as if it's fact, and everybody goes, yeah, okay.
It's clear we're dealing with a cosmic Watergate, meaning some few people within major governments have known since at least July 1947, when 2 crashed flying saucers and several alien bodies were recovered in New Mexico, that indeed some UFOs are alien spacecraft.